Hello, YouTube fam. My name is Gina Maripova, and thanks for visiting my channel. Today's episode is to discuss the disappearance of Samantha Rose Sperry, who has been missing since March 17, 2018. Samantha, also referred to as Sam, was born on August 20th, 1992, and she grew up in Graves County, Kentucky. Her favorite color was yellow, and she absolutely loved sunflowers. Many describe her as being outgoing, caring, courageous, and she was also a little bit stubborn at times, hard-headed, had no problem telling you how she felt at any given time. She has a very close relationship with her family and was in contact with them every day before her disappearance. She would call them, see them in person, or even in text. When Sam was in her late teens, her family discovered that she had been experimenting with drugs and alcohol. Worried for her, they checked her into a treatment facility. It is said that that treatment facility worked for her, and she stayed clean for about 6 years. In that time, she married a man named Jacob Sperry, and together they had 2 children, first a daughter and then a son. Samantha was described as a very doting and loving mother. Although I could not find the reason for their separation, Sam and Jacob's marriage did not last. They were going through a divorce and going to court for custody of their 2 children. Sam also moved into her own place in Murray, Kentucky. Now about Wren Hendrickson. Hendrickson and Sam were friends all throughout school. They would do drugs together, and Wren stated that he had lost touch with her, Sam, when she got married to Jacob, but he continued with his partying lifestyle. When Samantha and Jacob had separated, she reached out to reconnect with Wren, and they soon began dating. Their relationship has been described as being on again, off again. Allegedly, their arguments would sometimes turn violent. It was a very dysfunctional relationship. Wren Hendrickson, his father Dusty Holder, and his uncle John Holder have very bad reputations around town amongst the local residents. They were no strangers to law enforcement, that's for sure. Each have lengthy criminal histories, with charges varying from manufacturing, selling, and use of methamphetamines, burglaries, breaking and entering, assaults, possessions of stolen property, and the list keeps going on. There are multiple posts on Facebook accusing Wren of rape and violence toward the young ladies in his town, although I must say that no convictions for those have been reported. Sam's aunt found out that she had relapsed. She reportedly had been using meth for about 2 weeks prior to her disappearance. They argued on text messages over her needing to return to treatment, and unfortunately, that would be the last time anyone in her family would hear from Samantha. On March 17, 2018, after texting with her aunt, Samantha and Wren went to Dusty and John's house where they all got high on meth. Now, this is allegedly, because we have no proof that she ever was actually there other than the word of the people who were there with her, supposedly. The last known location that she was at, where it could be verified, is when she was at home in Murray, Kentucky, texting with her aunt. But we'll get into that a little bit later. The following day, Wren was reported missing by his mother on March 18th, 2018. Allegedly, a distraught Wren FaceTimed his mom. He told her that he had taken a bunch of pills and was going to go into the woods and just die. Obviously, she was very upset, and she went and reported him missing. Now, because of Wren's interactions with cops before this, he was known to have weapons. He's never been very friendly with police officers, and they really just didn't want to go into the dark woods looking for a possibly armed man who didn't want to be found. So they did not immediately go in search of him. A couple of days later, Samantha was also classified as missing when her vehicle was found abandoned on the side of the road just outside of the Caleb Bottom Woods, approximately a mile from Dusty's property. 5 days after Wren was reported missing, he walked back out of the woods on his own accord. He was in pretty bad shape, though, and had to be hospitalized for hypothermia. When questioned by authorities about Samantha's whereabouts, Dusty, the father, stated that Sam and Wren had gotten into an argument the afternoon of the 17th at his place after they were smoking meth together, or however they did it, and that Wren had taken Samantha's vehicle and left to spend the night in her apartment in Murray. Samantha was so upset And so Dusty thought that taking her for a ride on his quad into the neighboring woods, adjacent to his property there, would help cheer her up. The story is that after riding around a bit, the quad got stuck in the mud and they could not get it out. It got dark outside, so they both decided to spend the night in the woods, sleeping on the quad. Dusty says he tried to make a fire, but was not successful because the wood was too wet. So they kept the motor running on the quad for warmth until the quad ran out of gas, and then in the morning, at daylight, they walked out of the woods and onto the adjacent road, but they were soaking wet, tired, and freezing. Dusty said he wanted to warm up in a local store and get something to eat, but Samantha decided to go the other way to a nearby cousin's house. Problem with that is the cousin's house was actually in the same direction that Dusty was heading, the same direction as that store, but that was just one of the many ways that this story makes zero sense. Anyways, they supposedly each set off walking in different directions, and he never seen her again. Not surprisingly, there is evidence that goes against Dusty's story, leaving many people to speculate about what actually happened that night. When the quad was found, it indeed was stuck and out of gas. However, it was not hard to get it unstuck. They were not far from Dusty's house. They both knew those woods like the back of their hands. So why did they want to freeze their asses off and sleep on the quad when they could have warmed up by walking back to the house or to Sam's cousin's house? It was also proven that he actually was able to make the fire. Why even lie about that? Its remnants were near the quad, and oddly enough, there were 2 cell phones found in the ashes, both belonging to Dusty. Investigators were able to track the route that they had supposedly taken out of the woods the very next morning. Footprints were found around the quad near the fire and through the woods to the highway. The only problem is there was only one set of footprints. You heard that right, just the one set, and they did not belong to Samantha. Strangely, they also found Sam's car keys on the ground near the quad, and I'll talk about that more in a little bit. Wren, however, gave a different account of that day's events. Actually, in the past 3 years, he has given several different statements to anybody willing to listen, and each time his story changes. So I'm just going to describe the first statement that I could find. He stated that, contrary to what his father said, he did not actually get into an argument with Samantha on the 17th. Wren states that he was in the yard with Dusty and Sam, talking on his cell phone, when he then watched his dad and Sam leave on the quad. When they did not come right back, he decided to take Sam's car and head back to their apartment in Murray to spend the night there. The next morning, March 18th, he returned to his dad's place. Shortly after he arrived to his father's house, his dad finally returned home on foot. No quad and no Samantha. He said that he had a really bad feeling that his dad did something bad to her. When he asked his dad about it, he was told to shut the F up and get out of his house. Later reports state that Wren took some of his and Samantha's belongings into the woods with him, but lost them, and these items were never recovered. Blood was, however, found in Samantha's car and apartment. It was sent off for analysis, but unfortunately the results have never been released, and we have no idea whose blood or when that was placed there. Shockingly, it took law enforcement an entire year after Sam's disappearance to conduct searches of the woods adjacent to Dusty's house. They only did so after getting backlash for not taking the investigation seriously enough. Now, these are reportedly a different section of woods than the ones where the quad had gotten stuck in the mud. These searches yielded no sign of Samantha, but officers did make one other startling discovery. Actually, 3. They found a hidden tree fort in these woods, but they also found 2 underground bunkers. And in one of those underground bunkers, they located a wanted fugitive that was attempting to hide under a mattress. He was identified as 41-year-old Ernest Dean Hendrickson, so obviously a relative of Wren's, although we don't know exactly how, cousin or who knows. He had warrants out of 4 counties for multiple felony offenses. But I must note here that Ernest is not a person of interest in Samantha's disappearance, because actually he was incarcerated at the time that she went missing. Remember, he was found a year later in this bunker. Police needed to do their job a little bit quicker, but for some reason, the family seems to think that it's because Samantha was using drugs. Is a possibility because the police chief at the time that Samantha went up missing, he was the police chief at that time. He ended up getting fired from his position because he had been stealing narcotics and pills from evidence at the police station, and so he obviously had a drug problem himself. So was he covering up for these guys because they were into drug selling, or was he just too high to do his job correctly? Not sure. But anyways, due to the many inconsistencies in Ren and Dusty's story and the poor investigational skills of the officers, everyone is left with more questions than answers and more theories as to what they believe might have happened. Like, why did Ren abandon Sam's car on the side of the road? It is apparent that Sam was not on that four-wheeler when it got stuck in the woods. And the reason I say that is because of the only one set of footprints that were found. Like, whose footprints were those? When were her keys dropped near the quad and by who? What were the results of the blood samples that were found in Sam's home and in the vehicle, and why are they not being released? Did they recover any pertinent information from the burned cell phones? There had to have been something on there for them to want to burn it. It doesn't make any sense otherwise. Are there more secret underground bunkers? And if so, could one be hiding Samantha or clues to her whereabouts? Did Sam even go to Dusty's house on the 17th? All evidence seems to point to the possibility that she went missing from her home in Murray. That is where she was when she last texted from her phone. Seems to me that Ren and Dusty know what happened to her. They cannot keep their stories straight at all, and none of it makes sense. Usually when it doesn't make sense, it's not true. Criminal masterminds, these people are not, which is evident by looking at their extensive arrest records. It has been almost 4 years since she was seen alive by her family. Somebody knows something, but nobody is talking. At the time she went missing, she was 25 years old, 5'6", about 130 pounds, with strawberry blonde hair and hazel eyes. She was last seen wearing stretch pants or sweatpants with a red waistband, sneakers, and a gray hooded sweatshirt. She has multiple tattoos, including a rose with a skull on her right shoulder, 2 roses with the name Rose on her right lower abdomen, and on her left thigh there is a tiger lily and sunflower. Her ears are pierced and her eyebrow may be as well. At the time she went missing, her daughter was 4 years old and her son was only 1. During an annual vigil held by her family, Samantha's estranged husband said, quote, "As sad as this is, it's a beautiful thing to see everyone here. We just need somebody to be brave. We know that there is an answer out there and we deserve it, and Samantha deserves it. It's just time for this to end. Don't be afraid of these people. We're not. Come stand with us," unquote. There's a $10,000 reward for any information that leads to an arrest in this case. If you know something, say something. Her family have suffered without closure for far too long. Thank you for going on this wild ride with me. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to my channel, and if you'd like to be notified when I post new content, just click the little bell. I post at least twice a week. If you have a case you would like me to look into, go ahead and let me know in the comments section. Have a great night, and I'll see you soon.